Hi there, I'm May. At a family dinner, my parents looked me in the eye and said, "We took a vote and decided my sister's family should stay in my house, and I should leave." They didn't ask. They never did. But what hurt most wasn't that moment. It was everything they did leading up to it. The fake gratitude letters, the public lies, the silent betrayals. They turned my home into a favor I never offered, then made me the villain for not accepting it. How did it come to this? And what did I do when I finally stopped being silent? I didn't tell anyone I was buying a house. Not because I was trying to be secretive, because I knew exactly what would happen if I did. I'd spent nearly 8 years budgeting with the precision of a surgeon. No spontaneous shopping sprees, no trendy brunches every weekend. Just spreadsheets, savings accounts, and a quiet craving for a life that was mine. And finally, it was happening. A small 2-bedroom cottage on the outskirts of Flagstaff. A wraparound porch, a garden that caught the morning sun, and pine trees that whispered at night instead of neighbors slamming car doors. That Sunday, I made the mistake of scrolling through photos of the house at dinner. "Wait, what is that?" Darlene's voice sliced through the casual chatter about gas prices and school fundraisers. She was peering over the mashed potatoes at my phone screen. I locked it instinctively. "Just a listing I've been looking at." "You're house hunting?" she asked, narrowing her eyes like I'd just admitted I was moving to Mars. I gave a tight nod, trying to keep the peace. "I already bought it. Closing was Friday." For 3 full seconds, the table went silent. Even my father, who usually only paused mid-bite for football scores, set down his fork. "You bought a house?" my mother said, her tone hovering somewhere between shock and judgment. "By yourself?" I nodded again. "Yes, it's done. I just haven't moved in yet." Darlene blinked rapidly, like the words didn't compute. "Without telling us? Why wouldn't you—" "Because it's mine," I interrupted, sharper than I intended. "I worked for it. It's where I want to live. Quiet, small, just enough space." My mother leaned back in her chair. "That's a lot of space for one person. 2 bedrooms? What on earth do you need that for?" I didn't answer. I just smiled faintly and stabbed at a green bean. The subject should have died right there, but it didn't. 3 days later, I opened my email and saw a message from my mother. The subject line read, "Important for the kids." Inside was a scanned legal document, an informal draft of a co-ownership agreement, the kind a real estate lawyer might draw up. Darlene and her 2 kids, Lorna and Dexter, listed as future residents with part equity potential. Attached was a note in my mother's handwriting, photographed from a yellow sticky pad. "It just makes sense. You're alone. They need stability, and you're their aunt." My stomach didn't drop. It didn't even tighten. It went cold. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a claim. I closed the laptop, walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and stared out the window. The pine trees swayed in the wind like they didn't care who lived beneath them. Back in my room, I opened the email again and stared at the names printed in crisp, confident font. My sister's, her children's, not mine. I didn't reply. I didn't yell. I didn't even ask, "How could you?" Because I already knew. This wasn't the first time they'd seen my boundaries as optional. Darlene had always been the one with the big eyes and bigger emergencies. Her car needed repairs. Could I front her the money just until her next paycheck? Lorna needed new ballet shoes. Could I spot it, just this once? And every single time I'd given, quietly, without making a fuss. And now, they expected me to hand over my house like it was just a bigger favor, just a bigger version of the same old pattern. I deleted the email without responding, but something inside me moved, something that had been still for too long. They didn't ask, they never asked, and I realized they never would. The Monday after the email, I left town for a weekend book fair in Prescott. 3 days of paperbacks, panel discussions, and cool spring air were exactly what I needed to clear my head. I didn't answer texts. I didn't check emails. I just let myself disappear for a little while, thinking maybe, just maybe, distance would cool whatever storm had started brewing. I was wrong. By the time I pulled back into my driveway that Sunday evening, the sun was hanging low behind the pine trees, stretching golden light across the path that led to my front door. Except, the gate was open. Wide open. I frowned. I always shut that gate. Always. The closer I got, the more wrong everything felt. There were bikes, small, plastic, colorful, leaning against my porch railing, a jumble of Crocs and Velcro sneakers by the door. Someone had drawn on the front window in what looked like dry erase marker. Clouds, flowers, a stick figure with a big head. I stepped inside. Laughter echoed from upstairs. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with the kind of dread that feels like falling. I moved through the house slowly, past my living room, where my throw pillows had been rearranged, and a juice box was leaking onto the edge of my rug. "Hello," I called out, though I already knew the answer. From the top of the stairs, Darlene's voice floated down, cheerful, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "Hey, you're back early." I stared up at her. "What are you doing here?" She descended the stairs like she lived there, sockless, holding a damp towel over one shoulder. "We just needed a place for a couple of nights. Lorna's had that cough again, and the apartment gets so stuffy. I figured, with your extra rooms and all." My hand tightened around the strap of my bag. "You moved in?" She tilted her head, confused, or pretending to be. "No, not moved in, just staying, temporarily. You weren't even here, May, and the door was unlocked." "The door was locked," I said flatly. She shrugged. "Dexter jimmied it open with a library card. He's clever like that." I didn't answer. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "You don't live here." She blinked, then gave me that smile she used when trying to turn guilt into affection. "Come on, you're always alone. We'll be gone by Friday. Promise." That night, I tried to make dinner feel normal. We sat at my kitchen table, which suddenly felt too small for four. Darlene talked about her boss cutting her hours, about Lorna's school fundraiser, about how hard it was managing everything without help. "You don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand," she said, without a trace of irony. I nodded slowly, chewing through my salad like it had committed a personal offense. Lorna, across the table, told me how much she liked my bookshelf. Dexter asked if he could sleep in the room with the window that faced the trees. "They finally sleep through the night here," Darlene said softly, looking at me over the rim of her water glass. "It's quiet, peaceful, they feel safe." The implication hung in the air like a net. If I asked them to leave, I'd be taking that away. I'd be the villain. I excused myself early, took my laptop and disappeared into my room. At midnight, after 2 hours of staring at a blinking cursor and scrolling through home security locks I hadn't needed, until now, I wrote a note. Short, direct. This house was not meant to be shared. I need space to think. Please be out by Friday. I folded the paper and taped it to the door of the guest room. I didn't knock. I returned to my own bedroom and, for the first time since moving in, turned the lock behind me. The click sounded louder than it should have. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, padded, paused near my threshold, then silence. And I lay in my own bed, heart clenched, realizing something terrifying. I no longer felt like the homeowner. I felt like a visitor. I woke up the next morning before the kids did. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that felt borrowed, not mine anymore. I opened my bedroom door cautiously and walked down the hall like a stranger checking into a rental. The note I'd left on their door was still taped up, unread or ignored. I didn't knock. I didn't want another empty promise or another version of just a few more days. I brewed my coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Outside, the early sun washed the porch in gold. Inside, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Lorna's school backpack, leaning against the doorframe like it belonged. A lunchbox tucked beside it. A set of tiny sneakers lined up in the hall. I stared at them, as if looking long enough would reverse the clock or dissolve the logic. I walked back toward the hallway and found Darlene folding laundry in what used to be my guest room. My extra set of linens, now hers apparently. "You signed her up for school here?" I asked. She didn't look up. "Not officially. I just took a look around the elementary near the market. It's close." I crossed my arms. "You said Friday." "I meant it," she said, as if offended. "But I don't want to keep dragging them around. They've had enough instability." "You brought them here." Her voice dropped just enough to make it feel like my fault. "Because I thought you'd understand. This is what family does." I didn't respond. I went back to my room, shut the door, and turned on my phone for the first time in a day. Missed texts, a couple of voicemails, and one message that made my stomach tighten. Rachel, Bookshop Collective. May! Wow, congrats! Just heard from your mom you've taken in Darlene and the kids. That's so generous. You've always been the grounded one in the family. My thumb hovered over the screen. I called her back. Hey, Rachel answered chipper. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just thought it was sweet. What exactly did you hear? I asked. That your sister moved in. That it was your idea. Eunice said you'd been planning it since the new house came through. That it was always meant to be a shared space. I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but my breath stalled. Rachel kept going, unaware. And Darlene posted that sweet quote on Facebook, you know, about second chances and the people who show up when you need them. It got a lot of love. Someone tagged you in the comments. I opened the app and found it instantly. A photo of the kids on my porch swing. The caption, a fresh start, grateful for a sister who always knows what family means. Beneath it, rows of comments. You're so lucky to have May. What a blessing to have a home like that. True family doesn't hesitate. I didn't like the post. I didn't respond. I just stared. And in that moment, I realized what had been happening wasn't spontaneous. It had been orchestrated. This wasn't a messy misunderstanding or an awkward family blur. This was a plan, one I hadn't seen because I was too busy being polite. Later that night, I sat at my desk and opened my journal. I flipped past the pages where I'd written about interest rates, home insurance quotes, grocery budgets. I started fresh. They didn't ask, I wrote. They just assumed, like they always have. The default babysitter, the car note that disappeared into silence, the birthday cake I paid for with the money meant for my dental bill, and now, this house. I scribbled harder, the words pouring out before I could second guess. They never wanted permission. They just needed me quiet. I underlined the sentence 3 times. Then I flipped to a clean page, circled tomorrow's date, and wrote one more line. No more pretending. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house under the weight of a silence I hadn't shaken in days. The kind of silence that grows teeth. The note circled in my planner still haunted me. No more pretending. I didn't know what form that truth would take, but something was coming. And I didn't trust the smiles that had started appearing in my inbox from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years. I pulled into the driveway just after 4. My mother had sent a reminder text about dinner, like we hadn't followed the same routine for the last 15 years. The air outside smelled like grilled meat and lavender fabric softener. Too clean, too calm. That alone made me nervous. When I walked in, I noticed it right away. Everyone was already there. Darlene, seated at the end of the table like a queen flanked by 2 loyal subjects, her children. Russell stood near the patio door with a drink, pretending to check the weather. My father hovered in the kitchen, watching garlic bread toast like it required engineering. It wasn't the normal scatter of arrivals and half-set napkins. This was staged. Hey, sweetie, Eunice said, a little too high-pitched. Come sit. We just started. I sat. I didn't hug anyone. I didn't put down my purse. I kept my eyes on the salad bowl and waited. Dinner began in fake peace. Small talk about Russell's upcoming project. A joke from Darlene about Dexter pretending to be a lawyer with a wooden spoon. My mother laughed too loud, nodding like it was the best thing she'd ever heard. Then my father cleared his throat. Your mother and I wanted to say something, he began, placing his fork down like a gavel. I kept chewing, waiting. We've all talked. Together. And we think it would be best for everyone if Darlene and the kids stayed at your house long term. I looked up slowly. Eunice chimed in. You don't need all that space, May. And the kids, they're finally settling in. We voted. This just makes sense. You voted? I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, she said, like she was explaining how recycling worked. Your father, Darlene, Russell, and I, we've thought it through. And where was I during this vote? I asked, leaning back. In exile? You've always been so private, Darlene offered, like that was a crime. We figured this way we could just handle it for you. For me? I said, finally letting a laugh slip out. You voted me out of my own home for my benefit. Russell spoke for the first time. You're still welcome to visit, of course. It's not like we're kicking you out." "You're not?" I turned to Darlene. "And what would you call this? Democracy? A family coup?" Her mouth twisted into that all-too-familiar smirk. "This is what's best for the kids. You've never had children, so I don't expect you to understand." I didn't scream. I didn't throw my glass. I simply looked at each of them, one by one. My mother, who once told me I was too serious to ever be a good mom. My father, who used silence as a tool, not peace. Darlene, who'd always assumed my success was an extension of her luck. And Russell, an accessory in a plan he never questioned. "I'm not a storage unit for your mistakes," I said quietly. No one responded. The next morning, I couldn't let it sit. My hands shook slightly as I scrolled through my digital mailbox. Buried between spam and account notifications, I found it. A flagged message from the Coconino County Assessor's Office. Subject: Property Classification Adjustment Parcel, #1180403A, filed by Gerald Liang, category updated to multifamily residence, minors present. I clicked the PDF, scanned through the changes. The language was bureaucratic, but clear. The house was now on record as being occupied by multiple family units, with children, which meant tax breaks, which meant benefits, which meant someone had taken liberties. I printed it, stapled it, filed it in a bright red folder labeled Evidence. Then I scribbled a sticky note and pressed it to the front cover. They want legal? Let's go legal. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed like a statue, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan as it turned in slow, rhythmic creaks that matched the pounding in my chest. Not fear, not anxiety, not even dread, just pressure. Heavy and ancient, pressing on every part of me that had ever been told to be the bigger person. On the nightstand, the red folder sat like a live wire, thick with proof, cold with facts. It stared at me in the dark, silent, patient, undeniable. By dawn, I'd had enough. I sat up, cracked my knuckles one by one, walked barefoot across the floor and opened my laptop. My fingers didn't hesitate, not this time. I drafted the email the way a surgeon preps for an incision. Clean, clinical, no excess. Subject: notice to vacate. 48 hours. The body of the message was razor-sharp in its clarity. This message serves as formal notice that you, Darlene Liang, are to vacate the premises at 4474 Pine Hollow Lane within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in legal proceedings for trespassing and unlawful occupancy. I will be changing the locks effective immediately. No emotion, no compromise, just truth. I attached screenshots, Darlene's posts claiming residency, the property tax adjustment filed without my consent, and the unsigned co-ownership agreement that had tried to rewrite my autonomy into a gift. Then, without flinching, I hit send. By 7:30 a.m., I was in my car, heading to the hardware store. I bought a full lock set, new security screws, and a motion-activated camera system. The guy at the register asked if I needed help installing it. I told him I didn't. I didn't tell anyone. No warning, no announcement, just action. Back at the house, I drilled and replaced every lock, front, back, side. I mounted the camera by the porch light, adjusted the angles, and synced the feed to my phone. Each click of the screwdriver was a reclaiming, a refusal, a promise to myself. The silence felt different now, not hollow, but fortified. That peace lasted until dusk. My phone buzzed. Eunice Liang. "If you keep the kids out, you'll force our hand. Courts don't look kindly on family who abandon blood." I read it twice. The gall, the audacity to frame boundaries as cruelty, to weaponize family like a leash. I didn't reply. I took a screenshot, then forwarded the message to the legal services clinic I'd quietly reached out to 2 days earlier. The woman I spoke with, soft-spoken, sharp-eyed, had told me, "Expect pushback, document everything, and don't engage emotionally. Stay dry." So I did. Still, when I set the phone down, my hands trembled, not from fear, from fury. Fury that had been caged too long, polite too long, quiet too long. That evening, Therese called. "Hey," she said, voice careful, but not quite worried. Yet. "Are you okay?" I could already tell something was off. "What happened?" She hesitated. Russell called me. I didn't say a word, just waited. He said he was worried about you, she continued, that you'd been acting irrational. He wanted me to talk to you, to reason with you. My jaw clenched. My vision narrowed. Did you? I asked, my voice low. Of course not. Her tone turned flinty. I told him I'm not some emotional interpreter. I'm your friend, not a mouthpiece for people who only call me when they want access. I closed my eyes, let the words settle. He tried to guilt me, May, said, and I quote, she's always been a little rigid, you know how she gets. Like you're some malfunctioning machine. Like holding a boundary is a disorder. I let out a long, slow breath and pressed my hand to my chest. They weren't just testing my patience anymore. They were trying to corner me, discredit me, piece by piece. Thank you, I whispered. You don't owe them a damn thing, she said, steady as a lighthouse. Not your house, not your peace, not your silence. After we hung up, I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I opened a blank document. Subject: Notice of breach of trust. I wrote the full timeline, calmly, methodically. I listed every manipulation, the family vote I hadn't been invited to, the school backpack that showed up in my hallway before a conversation ever did, the public lies, the property filings behind my back, the false narrative of generosity I never offered. I attached every screenshot, email, and photo. I named names. I didn't editorialize. I just laid out facts like evidence on a courtroom table. At the end, I typed one last sentence. If you attempt to contact me again through any third party, including friends, employers, or acquaintances, I will file for a restraining order. I stared at the screen for 10 seconds. Then I clicked send. Later that night, while brushing my teeth, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, foam still in my mouth. One new email from Eunice Liang. Subject: Betrayal. The body of the message. So this is what betrayal feels like. I stared at the sentence. Then I laughed. Not a joyful laugh, not even a bitter one. The kind that escapes when a balloon finally deflates after holding too much pressure. Shaky, breathless, done. I didn't respond. Let her sit with it. 2 days passed since I drew the line. 2 days of cold silence from my family, which felt less like peace and more like the eerie quiet before a storm. The kind of calm where you can sense the air thickening, waiting to break. That morning, my phone buzzed before my alarm even went off. I groaned, rolled over, and squinted at the screen. I had been tagged on Facebook, Instagram, even a community group post. The first image hit like a slap. There was Lorna, barefoot in my yard, chasing bubbles across the grass. Behind her stood the swing set I'd built last summer, alone, still dusted with pollen from spring. The caption read, "Home at last, God provides." Then another photo, Darlene leaning on my porch railing like it was hers, arms crossed, smug. Blessed to be back where we belong. Couldn't have done it without my sister's grace. I didn't click like, I didn't comment, but I stared at the screen so long my coffee went cold in my hand. My notifications exploded. People from church, the neighborhood, even coworkers who barely knew me chimed in. You're such a generous soul, May. The world needs more sisters like you. Your mom raised you right. Each line twisted like a knife. They believed it, every word. I didn't respond. I opened a blank Word doc and started saving screenshots. By lunch, I'd compiled over 40 public messages, 3 reposts from church groups, and 1 community page article titled, "Family Reunited Through Grace." My name was all over it. I hadn't spoken a single word, and yet, apparently, I'd donated my home. The hits didn't stop there. Later that afternoon, after I returned from the bookstore, my phone rang. It was Janine, a woman from church I barely spoke to outside potlucks. "May, I just wanted to say how inspiring your donation was," she said warmly. "Eunice's announcement this morning nearly made me cry. She said you pledged your savings to rebuild the children's wing." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "She said it was your way of honoring God by supporting the next generation. She even called it a family blessing." I mean, wow, right? I hung up politely, without exploding. Then I checked my bank app. My secondary account, the one I rarely used, had a recent inquiry marked as authorization verification. The email attached? gerald.liang.as@gmail.com. I shut my laptop so fast it made a sharp thud on the table. They didn't just take over my house, they were trying to take my money. I opened my front-facing camera and stared at myself. My face was tight, my lips pressed in a flat line. I didn't look angry, I looked exhausted, and yet, something steeled inside me. I sat down and drafted a public post, my first in months. There seems to be confusion about ownership, generosity, and consent. So let me be clear, no one lives in my house but me. I have not pledged any property or finances to anyone. If you've heard otherwise, you've been misled. No names, no drama, just truth. I disabled comments, posted it to Instagram, Facebook, and even my business profile. Then I turned off all notifications. That night, I curled up with tea and tried to lose myself in an old movie. Halfway through, my phone buzzed again, this time from the Ring app. Motion detected. I tapped the screen, expecting raccoons or the neighbor's cat, but it wasn't an animal. It was Russell, standing at my front door, holding a suitcase. His face was blank, not pleading, not apologetic, just waiting. I didn't move, didn't get up, just watched as he stood under the porch light, like he belonged there. Like this was a check-in, not a confrontation. She checks the camera. It's Russell, with a suitcase. I didn't open the door. I watched Russell through the camera feed, framed in that soft cone of porch light like an actor waiting for his cue. His shoulders slumped. His suitcase sagged beside him like some kind of emotional prop, his version of, "See, I'm suffering too." The intercom buzzed softly as his voice came through, hesitant, low. "I'm not here to fight," he said. I need to talk. I got nowhere else." Not an apology, not even an acknowledgement, just the quiet assumption that I might let him in, simply because he asked. I pressed the mic button, my voice firm and stripped of any warmth. "This isn't your home. It never was. Turn around." There was a pause, brief but heavy. He didn't plead, didn't argue. He just stood there like he was waiting for the script to change, like he thought if he stayed long enough, I'd fall back into old habits and open the door anyway. I didn't. After a long beat, he picked up his suitcase and walked into the dark. 10 minutes later, a text buzzed across my screen. From my mother. "So now you're heartless too?" No greeting, no explanation, just 7 words laced with guilt and barbed like wire. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I could almost hear her voice in my head, measured, disapproving, dripping with disappointment. A weaponized sigh dressed up as concern. The kind of message that doesn't ask for a reply. It demands surrender. I didn't answer. I turned my phone face down and walked away. But it was too late. The words had already done their job, pressed directly into that old bruise where family and guilt always lived too close together, like tonguing a sore tooth, even when you know it'll hurt. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of notifications, 27 to be exact, and I didn't need to look to know something had blown up. I pulled open my laptop, blinking through sleep, and logged into my blog. A quiet space where I usually posted about simple joys. Thrift store book finds, composting tips, weekend gardening experiments, nothing controversial, nothing dramatic. Except now, it looked like a war zone. The comment section had been ambushed. "Wow, kicking out your own family? Must be nice to have all that money and no heart. Those poor kids. You'll regret this one day. Ungrateful. Hope karma gets you good." Some comments were anonymous. Others had names I recognized. Church folks. Darlene's old co-workers. A parent from Lorna's school. The tone wasn't random. It wasn't spontaneous. It felt rehearsed. Like everyone had received the same script. I minimized the window and opened Facebook. A post had gone viral in a local Flagstaff neighborhood group. I read the first line and felt my stomach turn. Just heard about a woman who bought a house she didn't need, then kicked out her sister and niece after they'd finally found some stability. Sure, she owns it, but what about basic decency? The post was accompanied by photos, my porch, my swing set, my blooming tulips. Images lifted directly from Darlene's old social posts, now repackaged as proof of a betrayal I never committed. I tried to find the family group chat, to see if anyone had the audacity to explain. Nothing. Not one thread. Not even the casual ones we used for birthday reminders or group plans. It wasn't just silent, it was gone. They'd removed me, the clean, digital version of being exiled. I sat still for a minute, blinking, trying to process it all. The erasure, the twist. The way they hadn't just rewritten the story, they'd replaced me entirely. That's when my phone buzzed again. A message from Camilla, my cousin on my dad's side. We hadn't talked since the last reunion, unless you count an occasional happy birthday post. Hey, just saw the posts. Didn't know you were letting them stay with you long term. That's really kind of you. Kind of me? I stared at the screen, pulse slow but heavy. This was no longer about the house. This was about identity, narrative, control. They weren't just squatting in my home, they were squatting in my story. I started to type a reply, paused, deleted, rewrote, deleted again. And then I typed the only thing I meant. Let them watch. They'll see what comes next. No more hoping it would die down. No more trying to be the bigger person while they dragged my name through every hallway in town. I had drawn lines. I had given warnings. I had stayed silent long enough. Now, I was ready to scorch the damn map if that's what it took. Let them come. The week that followed felt like a slow spin of a loaded chamber. Nothing happened, but everything could. The online storm hadn't died. If anything, the silence that followed my post made it worse. People filled the gaps with speculation. The void breeds noise. Then Saturday morning, just as I finished watering the indoor fig tree by my kitchen window, the doorbell rang. I peeked out, expecting mail or maybe another church pamphlet shoved under the doormat. Instead, it was Lorna. She stood there with a neighbor I barely recognized, Mrs. Keller from 3 houses down, her arms crossed protectively as if she was both escort and shield. "Hi," Lorna said, eyes low. "I asked her to drive me. I didn't tell Mom." I blinked, nodded, opened the door. Mrs. Keller gave a quiet smile. She said she needed to return something. I didn't ask. Lorna stepped inside, hands clenched around something folded. I waited until we reached the living room before asking, "Are you okay?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she offered the paper. It was the thank you note, the one Darlene had bragged about, the one everyone had reposted like it was proof of my generosity. "I didn't want to write it," Lorna mumbled. "Mom said we had to. She said if we didn't show people you were okay with everything, you'd kick us out and we'd be homeless." My breath stalled. Not out of shock, but out of recognition. I crouched to eye level. "Lorna, you can tell me anything, I promise. No one will punish you for being honest." She nodded quickly, like the words were too heavy to speak twice. "I don't like lying," she whispered. "I know," I said, pulling her into a light hug. "And you're brave for saying the truth." Mrs. Keller returned to take her home. I stood in the doorway and watched the car disappear down the street, Lorna glancing back once from the passenger seat. That glance, it stuck. Later that night, Therese texted, "I need to show you something. Come over." 15 minutes later, I was in her apartment, curled up on her couch with a mug of green tea, while she scrolled through her phone. She tapped a file, played a recording. It was a speakerphone conversation, scratchy but clear. "Eunice, you're close to her. Make her see this is good for everyone. Just nudge her a little." My spine straightened. Therese paused the audio. That was 2 weeks ago. She didn't know I was recording, obviously. I didn't even plan to, but it felt off. So I hit the button. Another beat. I didn't want to believe she was pulling strings, but I couldn't let it go either. I nodded. "You did the right thing." She stared at me. "Are you going to use it?" I didn't answer right away. When I got home that night, I opened a new folder on my desktop, named it Final Evidence Into It. I dropped screenshots, voice files, photos, emails, banking inquiries, Lorna's handwritten note, audio of my mother, everything. The next morning, I woke early, wrote a summary email to my attorney. Subject line, "Final file for cease and desist and protective order." I attached the folder, locked it, sent it. Then I went about my day, fed the cat, restocked a few things in the bookstore, replied to emails that had nothing to do with family. It was almost normal. Until just after dinner when my phone vibrated with a news alert. Not from a news site, from a shared calendar. An auto alert. Church fundraiser update, sponsored by the Liang family. Of course, Of course, they'd go ahead with the public show, even after everything. I didn't check social media. I didn't need to. I sat down on the edge of my bed and let the stillness settle. Across town, at a dining room table crowded with papers and cold leftovers, my mother's phone buzzed. She reached for it, expecting a message about choir rehearsal or a forwarded meme. Instead, she saw the subject line, saw my name, opened the file. Her face paled. "She actually did it," she whispered, not to anyone in particular, just into the air. 1 month passed, not with fireworks or fallout, just silence. Clean, polished, and almost too neat. The kind of quiet that feels orchestrated, not earned. I didn't hear from any of them. No guilt-dipped texts, no surprise doorstep offerings meant to look like olive branches. No cryptic Facebook posts about family being everything or side-eyed Bible quotes in pastel fonts. Just nothing. On paper, it looked like peace. But peace has a heartbeat. This didn't. This was hollow, like walking through a house after a storm's passed, walls still standing, shingles mostly intact, but you just know something underneath has shifted, something foundational, subtle, dangerous. I tried to settle back into routine, store receipts, inventory logs, garden updates, grocery runs. For a while it almost worked. Until Thursday. I was knee-deep in quarterly reports, sorting through receipts that still smelled faintly of ink and cheap envelope glue, when a single ping hit my inbox. Just one. But it sliced clean through the fog. Subject: Darlene Liang, Program Applicant Reference Notification. At first, I thought it was spam, a misclick, some misrouted mailing list. But it wasn't. It was from the city's Economic Renewal Initiative, a mentorship program I'd been part of for years, helping small business owners and underrepresented entrepreneurs build something real. I'd poured hours into that work, quiet hours, unseen hours, and now there it was. Darlene had applied and listed me, by name, as her mentor, as her inspiration. My name tied to her application like a borrowed credential, like a reference she never earned but assumed she could claim. The email didn't ask me to confirm or approve, just a formality, it said. No action required unless you wish to dispute. I didn't click anything, didn't scroll, didn't breathe for a moment. I just stared at the screen like it was showing me some twisted, alternate timeline. One where we were loving sisters who supported each other's dreams, where inspiration meant mutual respect, not manipulation wrapped in flattery. That world didn't exist. I closed the laptop and stood. Not with rage, not with sorrow, with ache, the kind of ache that lives in the space just beneath healing, like a scab picked too soon. Painful, but exposing something fresher underneath. Later that day, I stopped by the store on the way home, picked up things I didn't really need, strawberries out of season, a new brand of tea I probably wouldn't like, a candle that promised serenity, but mostly smelled like dish soap and pine. I took the long way home, windows down, let the cool wind remind me I was still here, still choosing this solitude over chaos, even when it felt lonelier than I wanted to admit. As I pulled up to my gate, I noticed something fluttering, light and deliberate, pinned to the wooden slats like a paper wing waiting to be noticed. I got out slowly. It was a note, folded neatly and clipped with a clothespin. The handwriting was unmistakably a child's, loopy, uneven, each letter trying a little too hard to be neat. "Aunt May, Mommy said I can't come over again, but I just wanted to say I liked the purple flowers. They look like you." Taped to the corner was a pressed violet, dried, brittle, faded, but still holding onto a sliver of color. I didn't cry. I just stood there, longer than I probably should have, thumb grazing the crease of the paper. It said more than all the phone calls, posts, and updates from the last few months combined. It was simple, honest, quiet. I slipped the note into my pocket and walked inside. 3 days later, the local book fair opened downtown. I hadn't planned to go. I'd told myself I was too busy, that the store needed restocking, that my time was better spent catching up on sleep, on silence, but something in me itched for stories. Not polished narratives or curated captions, but pages, paper, ink, books that let you breathe and bleed and don't ask you to shrink. So I went. I wandered the rows like a ghost with purpose, stopping at every third table, nodding politely, fingering spines of books I didn't plan to buy but needed to touch. Sometimes, Just standing in a place where people believe in words is enough. That's when I saw them. Near the outreach tent. Lorna and Dexter, wearing matching volunteer shirts 2 sizes too big, handing out bookmarks and pamphlets like tiny professionals. Dexter was laughing at something one of the authors said. Lorna had her hair pulled back in a ponytail, focus narrowed on stacking a pile of flyers with geometric precision. They didn't see me, not at first. But then Lorna looked up. Her eyes met mine, and froze. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. But she didn't look away either. That was enough. I waited until they moved on to the next booth. Then I walked up to the table and left 2 bookmarks of my own. One said, "You write your story." The other, "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." Then I walked away. No fanfare, no announcement, just a quiet exit, the kind I was learning to master. Back home, I made tea, rooibos with a cinnamon stick, the kind that tastes like memory and warmth in equal measure. I sat at my desk, lit by the golden spill of early evening light, and opened my journal to a fresh page. One line. Peace is a locked door I only open to those who know how to knock. I stared at it, then underlined it twice, and closed the book. Then came the sound, a knock. Not loud, not urgent, not familiar, just respectful. I didn't flinch, didn't brace, didn't reach for armor. I stood, walked to the door, steps steady. Not everyone deserves the key. But maybe, just maybe, someone someday might finally learn how to knock. Sometimes family isn't who raised you, it's who respects you. And if there's one thing this chapter of my life taught me, it's this. You don't owe anyone access to your peace just because they share your blood. Boundaries are not betrayal. Silence isn't kindness. And being the good one shouldn't mean becoming the forgotten one. It's easy to tell people you're strong. Harder to show them what strength really looks like. For me, it looked like locks changed, emails sent, and letting go without needing to explain myself again. And yet, a part of me still wonders, how many of you have sat at a dinner table where your worth was silently voted out? Or worse, rewritten by people who never bothered to ask who you really were? If you've ever been made to feel guilty for choosing yourself, you're not alone, and you're not wrong. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a line with your own family? What was the moment that made you finally say, enough? If this story touched your heart, leave a 1 in the comments, or tell me what city you're watching from. Didn't love it? That's okay too. Let me know why, and where you're tuning in. I read every single one. And if you'd like more raw, real-life stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you never miss what comes next. Thanks for being here. Stay strong,